Hello, my name is Josh Drozdowski, and I'm currently a master's student in educational leadership and policy studies at the University of Northern Colorado. In 2010 and 11, I taught for one academic year at King Faisal University. I taught English in the university prep program, and all of my students were 18, 19, or 20-year-old male students who were preparing for their university degrees in various fields, business, engineering, pharmacy, programs like that. Um, Prior to going to Saudi Arabia, I was familiar with the country from somewhat of an academic standpoint because I was a social studies teacher. And I had studied to be a social studies and history teacher before moving to Saudi Arabia, so I was probably more familiar than your average person with the Middle East in general, Saudi Arabia as a country, and Islam as a religion, and how all those things are interconnected. Um, some of my thoughts before or about Saudi Arabia before going were really just what my daily life would look like, um, what I might do in my free time, and what kind of people I might meet while I was there. I wasn't, I didn't really have too many preconceived notions about what my life would look like, other than knowing that it was going to be probably pretty different. Um, After my experience in Saudi Arabia, some of my impressions were um, how pleasant it was to meet so many nice people. In America, there are a lot of stereotypes about Saudi Arabia and its relationship with the United States and American people in general. And I had nothing but pleasant interactions with everybody I met in Saudi, my students and Saudi coworkers, and people I met casually while I lived there. Um, some of my other thoughts were it was really nice to see what day-to-day Saudi life was like as much as I possibly could. It was really nice to see how friendly and hospitable the Saudi people were to myself and my other coworkers because we were all foreigners. And it was really nice to see a lot of the traditional negative stereotypes that are often perpetuated in Western society, especially in the United States, about Saudi Arabia and Saudi people. It was nice to see those proven wrong, and it was nice to know that I could come home and tell people that I had a positive experience while I was there. While I worked in Saudi Arabia, most of the people I worked with were Western men. I worked with about 50 other men from the U.S., Canada, Britain, and a couple Australian men. And 4 or 5 of them had wives that had come with them. They were teaching couples. And I think a point of curiosity to Americans and the West in general is the status and the condition for women in Saudi Arabia, and then especially when it comes to Westerners working in Saudi Arabia, whether it's teaching or for another profession, what their experience might be like. My girlfriend and now wife at the time was still in the U.S. and she didn't come with me. I can only comment on the conversations and personal interactions I had with the women I did work with. And I think in general, they had a really positive experience. It was an eye-opening experience. It was totally different than where they had come from. And one of the things I think that they had the hardest time one of the things they had the hardest time getting used to was the feeling of being extremely different. In the town where I worked, it was a very small town. It wasn't large like Riyadh or Jeddah. So when they went to places like the grocery store or the shopping mall, they stuck out pretty obviously being white Western women, and the feeling of being looked at frequently, I think was the hardest thing for them to get used to. And I think due to some of the cultural differences in terms of like the social situation for women in the U.S. or Canada versus that in Saudi Arabia, I think over time they started to really grapple with some of those preconceived notions about what life was like for women in Saudi Arabia. As a Western man and a foreigner living and working in Saudi Arabia, while I had an entirely positive experience, I think the one thing that was the most difficult for me was realizing that there was a part or an aspect of Saudi society that I was never truly going to be able to know or experience. Um, to me, a lot of Saudi social life happens within Islam and then within the family. And being a foreigner, not being a Muslim, and not having a Saudi family to experience those social interactions with, I felt like there was a large part of Saudi society and culture that was really difficult for me to see and experience firsthand because I am a foreigner and I am always somewhat on the outside of that experience and that interaction. So that for me was the most difficult part to get used to because I felt like I was always kind of missing out on part of the experience. In general, I think the biggest positive experience and takeaway from the time that I spent living and working in Saudi Arabia were my professional and personal interactions with the students I taught there. It was really nice to get to know them to the extent that I could as people and as students. And it was really nice to see that there were a lot more similarities between the young men that I met there and the young men that I've met in teaching in the United States than there are differences. And it was really nice to see them, seem to take a genuine interest in me as a person as well, like where I come from and why I came to Saudi Arabia and what my family is like here. And I felt respected, and that was, really nice, positive feeling. And, it was also really, I met some other Western teachers there that, I still keep in touch with and would still call friends as well. So that part as well was a positive learning experience because it was a situation, a personal and professional situation that for most of us was something that we were not used to or exposed to in any way, shape, or form previously, and it was nice to experience that with some other really nice people.